Hi there, and welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Colin Padget, President and CEO of Founders Metals, trades on the TSX Venture Exchange with the symbol FDR. Hey, Colin, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you. I'm sure you're a busy guy, lots going on, so really appreciate you setting aside a few minutes for us to answer some questions. Obviously, you guys have been top of mind, have been a very well-performing stock sort of since the summer. You've been pulling out some amazing high-grade sort of drill holes here. And so I thought it was about time that we had you on, so appreciate you accepting the invite. Maybe for some of my viewers that don't know you, maybe you could discuss a bit about your background. Do you come from like a geological side, the technical side, or on the finance? Maybe you could just walk us through a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Bit of both, I guess, between the finance and the technical piece. In terms of education, I started out on the business side. I went to Memorial University in Newfoundland, did a business degree there, and then got into banking, actually, commercial retail side of that. Decided that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, and went back to school I did geology at the University of New Brunswick and then grad school at the University of Calgary. Spent a lot of time actually in terms of geology and technical work focused on orogenic gold deposits, which is what Antino is. A couple of different variations on that, and did a lot of field work, bedrock mapping, structural geology, those sorts of things. So I think when I went back to school to do the geology piece, I think originally I was thinking I wouldn't use that business part quite so much going forward. It certainly felt like that with a bit of the field work, but it's kind of come full circle where I use both now quite a lot. In terms of how I, came to be CEO of Founders, I was actually working for Founders and managing its technical programs before coming across Antino, and then been doing some project development work. Yeah, we came across this project, and I did the evaluation on it, brought the deal forward, and kind of through the whole process, and then I came on board as CEO kind of along with it. So it's provided me a lot of continuity. Right from day one, introduction of the project, to carry it to where we are today. It's been, I'm very grateful for that.
Great. Well, I've heard your name mentioned quite a bit, all mostly nice things. So that's great. Always good to hear somebody had started doing some field work and out in the field. So is that something you still get a chance to do much of now that you're CEO and have to wear sort of both hats?
A lot less field work these days, absolutely, which is fine. I really enjoy what I'm doing on this side. I do get down to site fairly often. Been down, I think, 7 times last year, and I've already been down twice this year. So pretty often in the field, and while I'm there, I definitely want to get around and see the new things and actually touch some of the rocks. So I do still do a little geology. Yeah.
Excellent. And so Suriname, that's not really a name that I guess investors that invest in small cap Canadian listed stocks it's not really a jurisdiction that we hear a lot about. Pretty interesting sort of jurisdiction as I've done some more research into it. But how'd you find or come across the project in the first place? And I guess you called the Antino Gold project?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, the story really actually starts with the whole West African analog piece. I was actually evaluating some projects in Ghana, potential new acquisitions, that kind of thing, and came across one of those maps like you see in our presentation where it's, West Africa and then the Guiana Shield and how they used to be together, and pretty much just asked in our group, does anyone know a lot about this jurisdiction? And got connected to, somebody in our group connected me with the guys at Aurea Mining, which at the time they were, had a bit of legal stuff going on protecting their core asset, the Montagne d'Or deposit in French Guiana. And they were, turned out looking to sell or do something with Antino. And they'd already put quite a bit of time and effort into building it up as their next exploration play. So they had a lot of work done in the due diligence side. They had a structural geologist come in and do mapping. They did some chemistry work over the property. They resampled core, all kinds of stuff like that. And we were just fortunate to kind of come into it as almost a turnkey thing at that time. It certainly worked out.
Excellent. Well, we'll get a little bit more into the project in a few minutes, but maybe you could just give us a bit of an overview of the company, maybe over the last 12 months. Your share price has seen considerable strength in kind of a tougher junior market. So hats off to you and your team for that. But could you give us a bit of an overview on the company, just in general? What's founders?
Sure. Founders a Canadian junior exploration company. Core asset is the Antino Gold project. We do also have another gold asset in New Brunswick, in Eastern Canada, but focused 100% on Antino for pretty obvious reasons these days. In terms of timeline and kind of the history or what's happened over the last year, I mean, really, we closed the transaction in March last year. We got drills to site. It was in kind of mid-May sort of time frame, and then end of June we were drilling. We had results out, kind of a couple of weeks later, which ties into the whole 2 to 3 week turnaround time piece. And the first couple of results, I mean, we had fantastic. Like there were multiple over 100 gram meter product hits, but as you say, it's a tough market. Didn't see a lot of movement in the stock, a little bit of volume, and it was in August 24th, we put a release out with 15.5 meters of 31. And that had people at least go back and look and say, hey, these last two weren't bad either. And that was where it really took off. And that, garnered a lot of attention. And we were able to raise some money on the backs of that. And then the results really have continued since then. And we've, taken the original zone and, we've expanded it with the step out work we've done more recently. We're in the process of extending along strike and getting results out on that front. And it's just, it's grown quite well.
Yeah, you announced something about it, like a parallel zone or something. Is that correct?
That's right. So, I mean, we started last year basically doing some follow-up work or confirmation drilling of some of the historic results. And, they hadn't drilled very deeply. Overall, there were some inconsistencies with, what we could map or what we could sample at surface. So we drilled it from a different orientation, kind of based on new information that we had that wouldn't have been available at the time. And, had some good initial results. And then kind of stepping out from that, we just kind of kept building. And
you've had some spectacular hits, so that's good to see. I would say that's probably one of the reasons why you're a bright spot amongst a sea of sort of tough times. Is probably part of that. You've got a experienced team, and then you've got an asset which is pulling some pretty eye-popping numbers. So good stuff on that. Just in terms of the flagship project, could you maybe go into the terms of ownership? Do you own it 100%? Are you earning in? Maybe you could just kind of briefly touch on that.
Sure. Yeah. We have an option agreement right now to acquire 75% interest in the property. That's over 3 stages. We're currently in stage 1. And at our current pace of exploration, looks like, sometime this year we would, have the exploration spend that's required to exercise stage 1 for 51% and gain that kind of controlling interest in the property. And then after that, our next stage is to 70%. Likewise, I think the pace that we're moving is a lot faster than what the work commitments or spend requirements are. And so, we're looking to really move that part forward as quickly as we can. Additionally, after stage 2, I mean, another kind of key part of this project, everyone asked me a lot about, can you get 100%? Well, there is, basically it turns into a joint venture after stage 2 where, the option owners have to contribute proportionally to the spend going forward from there. And if they're unable to do so, then they can be diluted down to 10%. So you kind of, that comes down to their financial capabilities, but, we have a pathway right there to 90%. And I guess on top of that, I would also say that, we have an excellent partnership with the people in country. And I really think that there's a lot of value in even having them part of the team and staying part of the team long term. So, we certainly value their interest and their participation.
Excellent. And you kind of touched on earlier that this Guiana Shield that you guys are operating on, or where this project's located, is kind of an analog for West Africa. I actually used to, probably about a decade, maybe a little longer, used to do some gold exploration work in West Africa with a number of juniors, including one that I ran. It was a pretty amazing place, but it was pretty busy. Lots of money, lots of majors. I would say is this Guyana sort of shield less explored than I guess the Burmese Shield over in West Africa.
Yeah, I mean, hugely so. Like the reality, I think, was the inventory for West Africa, historic and current, is something like 275 million ounces of gold. I think the current, same number for the Guiana Shield is, a little over 100 million. And but when you look at the surface areas of the actual greenstone belt, the Guiana Shield actually has a larger area, and is vastly underexplored. I think Suriname in particular. I mean, just flying, it's about 45 minutes to fly from Paramaribo, the capital, to site, and you fly over pretty endless terrain, but spotted with all of these artisanal working areas and artisanal mining camps, and there's a ton of opportunity for some new discoveries. And I think whether you're an institutional investor or any level of investor, or a junior exploration company, looking for where the next big thing's coming out of, the reality is that the Guyana Shield is really the next big jurisdiction on the go forward, and big mines are going to be coming out of there, out of the foreseeable future for sure.
Excellent. So we kind of touched on some of the recent drill results. Had some sort of impressive grades that were also not over just like a single meter or half a meter, as little veinlets and things like that some companies might get with different geological type gold projects. You guys have pretty significant, very mineable sort of widths if it were ever to go to that. You're ever able to put enough tons and stuff together. Can you elaborate a little bit on what these results are sort of telling you sort of about the system and the potential sort of size of it?
Well, I guess there's two parts to that. And I'll touch on the parallel zone piece. I don't think I fully answered that earlier as well. But first, from like a property scale, I mean, we've got 35,000 auger samples from historic work. Covers about a third of the property. And right now from that, we can define an 8+ kilometer long gold trend in that, with auger samples, up into the 70 gram per ton range, which is pretty incredible from a kind of 2 to 5 meter auger. And so you get that strike length. And then beyond that, even from that same data set, we've got lower Antino, we've got what was originally called T1A, but we're now calling Parbo, out closer to the Lawa River, with some similar scale anomalies in terms of gold values to what we see at Upper Antino. And so in terms of prospectivity, there's a lot there. And then kind of zooming in on what we've been drilling, what we've focused on, that's the Froyo gold trend, which is in Upper Antino, right next to our main camp. There's, north of the airstrip, there's 1.2 kilometers of, artisanal pits, that define gold mineralization the whole way along. We've, at this point, we drilled off about 550 meters long strike from kind of runway north. And, I think with the, what we have for evidence from the alluvial mining, we did some grab sample and channel work when we first got there. There's a lot of evidence for continuity. And that's kind of our plan right now, is to, really continue things along strike to the northwest. And we're also looking at taking things to the south too. We see some opportunity for extending southward. There was some historical drilling that really took things kind of northwest, southeast in a pretty straight line. And from the geophysical work and really the structural geology work that we've been able to do, we really see that there's, locally a north-south component to where typically, if the way that they went, they essentially kind of just moved away from it. And though they hit gold in all those drill holes, I don't think they stayed in the core of the system. And so we're working on drilling that off as well. Coming back to the parallel zone piece, though, like everything I just talked about, that's all extending kind of like a core zone that we knew there was mineralization there for sure. I mean, there's an artisanal pit and there's some fantastic historic grades from parts of it. We've been able to really show that there's some continuity there. And we've taken it down to about 150 meters of depth. But we wanted to go a little bit deeper. And to do that, we had to step back to the east so we could come underneath, essentially. And when we did that, we wound up hitting some pretty phenomenal grades. There's an interval there that got 26 meters of over 5 grams, and another 14 meters of 10 and this sort of thing. And in some cases, there's upwards of 40 meters of gold mineralization in a single hole that's, only got a couple of meters of, dilution or internal dilution there. So that was fantastic. And to have that from surface, right away, we know that, we're not in the same thing. It's something else. Initially, we went through the thought process of, is it something perpendicular? Is there a cross-cutting structure, etc.? But no, we've kind of, at this point, we've had enough consistent holes there, and a few of them that have hit multiple zones within it, that we're really seeing this kind of stacked zones of gold mineralization that really start to fill in that volume and make it a much more attractable kind of initial surface mineable volume or open pit volume. But then obviously with the grades that we have underground is clearly an option. So it's been pretty exciting. Yeah.
Excellent. And back when I was doing some stuff in West Africa, a lot of times the artisanal miners would sort of give you a pretty good indication of where you should be exploring. They'd be, getting some of the sort of coarse sort of free gold that would be in the quartz. Are you sort of seeing a similar sort of thing? Do you have pretty active artisanal mining on your project?
Yeah, the way it's structured right now, we have artisanal or small scale miners on the property. They act as contract miners to the optionors or to the concession owners, which has actually worked out really well. There's a couple of groups, and one of them's been there for over 15 years, and it lends us a certain stability to the area that I don't think you see necessarily, everywhere in West Africa or Guiana Shield or wherever you are with that kind of activity going on. They've actually been really helpful on the ground. We've been, have very open communication with them, very open dialogue, and they understand what we're there to do. And they've helped with access to heavy equipment, pad building, construction, all of these sorts of things. And it's really gone quite well. And I think that relationship will continue in the future.
Excellent. Well, I'd certainly be concerned if you didn't have any artisanal mining. So it's good that I would say it's good that you do. Yeah. It means you've got a pretty robust, probably a robust gold system there. So good stuff. Maybe we could sort of jump into some of your plans. I know, I think you are presently drilling, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you could kind of go through what your drill plans are for 2024. What you're drilling. Are there any specific targets that you're kind of drilling? And I guess a key thing would be, are you fully funded for 2024's drilling program?
Yeah. So yes, we're drilling, I guess, first question. But we're a little different than the usual junior story. So on the drilling front, we own 2 of our own diamond drill rigs. That's been a great benefit to us because it gives us a flexibility that you wouldn't have if you were paying a larger drilling company and had standby times and all of these sorts of things. So that our costs overall have been very low, I think, because of that. We're sitting about $160 Canadian all in for drill meter or per drill meter. That's Assay's kind of the works. And so that's allowed us to do a lot with not a lot of capital overall. And so right now, in terms of what our plans are going forward, we've got about 25 to 30,000 meters drilled. And I give a range there because it depends a bit on how much we spend on ground exploration. And there's some pretty exciting things there too that we want to take a look at. But that's what we have planned. In terms of where those meters go and what we're focusing on, there's a number of targets we generated from the geophysics, LiDAR work, mapping, all of that in Upper Antino. But we're definitely going to be continuing that extension work on the Froyo zone, like I mentioned, both to the northwest and southeast and to depth, as well as testing more or filling out more of that parallel zone. So that really does keep one rig pretty busy for the foreseeable future. The second rig will be looking at those exploration targets, but then also the thing we really want to get down to is the Boise area. Boise is a bit of a different beast than the Upper Antino stuff. What we've been drilling at Upper Antino or the Froyo zone is vein-hosted gold mineralization, very high-grade system. But at Boise, what we're looking at is intrusion-hosted mineralization. Still orogenic gold, but you're looking at more disseminated, big kind of bulk tonnage, lower overall grade, but much, much larger volumes. I'm pretty excited to get down there and put some drill holes into it. recently completed some new geophysics data down there. Again, having a structural geologist that really understands the area has made a big difference. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting a drill down there. Ideally, kind of April timeframe is when we'd hope to see it down.
If I didn't hear you, I think you mentioned something like 2 to 3 week assay turnaround. Are those assays that you're getting done in Canada, or are those back in country?
No, they're in country. In Paramaribo, there's a Bureau Veritas certified lab. Offers all the geochemical packages that you'd want to have for a gold exploration project, and they've been fantastic in terms of turnaround times. I think our fastest to date on some grab samples was, I think we had stuff back in 3 days once.
Wow.
Which is pretty incredible. It's been really helpful to us. And it's twofold. Like on the exploration front, it makes a big difference. Really brings down kind of remobilization costs, and you can test things and follow up on things very efficiently. We have had assays come back while we're on hole 3 on a pad from hole 1, and that's pretty incredible from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, it's almost real time rather than having to go and drill blind for the whole thing, right? So that's pretty fantastic.
Right. Yeah, it's competing with, I think, a couple of years ago, some of the turnaround times in BC were upwards of 5 months for some companies. So
yeah,
it's a big difference.
Well, that's excellent. So I guess that leads me into, what's it like overall working in Suriname? How's the infrastructure? How's the local labor sort of community? How's the community relations? It sounds like mining is like sort of in the DNA, in the blood with the locals. Maybe you could explain a little bit more sort of about working in Suriname?
Sure. Kind of a little bit of overview of the country, I guess. Suriname, the population of about 650,000 people. It's about 400 by 400 kilometers in terms of dimension. And, mining is a big part of, the history there. There's, been gold mining going on for, at this point, well over 100 years. Even at Antino, gold was first discovered in the late 1800s. So it's a big part of the economy. Represents a majority portion of kind of federal revenues for Suriname. So there's a vested interest, obviously, in the stability. On top of that, Suriname has 2 active mines by major operators right now. The Roosevelt mine is currently operated by Zijin, and Newmont has the Marion mine as well. When we look at Suriname as a jurisdiction and like workforce and everything, and because of that mining history, there is a lot of skilled labor. And we operate under basically a Suriname first employment policy, because of that. And I think that's gone a long way with just the overall community relationships and just people, wanting to be involved in our project, seeing the success. It's been nice to have that response. Additionally, I actually just got back last Tuesday. I met with the president of Suriname to kind of give them an overview of what we've been doing down there and that community relation, the employment piece, the environmental side of things as well. And it was a very positive interaction. And I think as a whole, we really enjoy it as a jurisdiction, honestly. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that. Maybe we'll let's hop into another topic here, cover some of the financial cap structure elements. What's the cap table sort of look like? How many shares are outstanding? Do you have any strategics that you're able to speak about?
Yeah, so we're about 58 million shares outstanding right now. There's about 11.5 million warrants. The warrants are split into 2 series. We've got some 35-cent ones and 75-cent warrants, both of them with expiries in March 2025. So there's a bit of time on them, but they've likewise both been kind of trickling in as they're pretty deep in the money. That's been great. It's provided us a bit of income, I guess, so to speak, and it's helped kind of keep the balance sheet stable. We've got about $5 million in cash right now in the bank, and that kind of, we already touched on it, but is effectively fully funds our current 25 to 30,000 meter drill program. After that, in terms of ownership on the cap table side, it's about 20% at this point of kind of insider ownership, and then the institutional and retail piece, it does kind of move around. It's your institutional, we're closer to 40% at this point. But it all
Wow.
depends on who's buying and when. So,
Well, that's great. So between management insiders and institutional, it's about 60% of the company.
yeah, it'd be pretty close.
Good stuff. It's been a harder environment out there for capital. How are you able to get BMO to do a $5 million bought deal for you last fall? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Uh, well, that has been a great experience. I actually met the guys from Bank of Montreal at the Beaver Creek conference there in Colorado last year. I was just there to generally meet people. We didn't have a full invitation to the conference at the time. We do this year. But I wound up getting introduced to them just kind of by happenstance ultimately. But they'd already heard a little bit of our story and kind of sat down with them, explained really what's going on down there and showed them everything. And they got pretty excited about it being a next kind of major play. And so you look at, our market cap at the time, we were probably, 40, 50 million at that time. And, Bank of Montreal typically doesn't look at doing bought deals quite that far down market. But I think they recognize the future potential. And, that's why they've been, kind of helped with the story and really helped move things forward. Actually, next week, we'll be at the Bank of Montreal conference. And I think partnering with them and then Paradigm Capital and Clara Securities were also part of that bought deal. Everyone's contributed
Great.
quite a lot. Yeah.
Well, those three would be fairly institutional shops, so good stuff. Showed that there'd be some good institutional interest for what you're working on. Enjoy the BMO conference. It's a good one. Not everybody gets invited, so that's certainly a good crowd to be rubbing shoulders with. Maybe we'll just sort of wrap up here. Thanks for the good overview. What's a typical day look like for you? Is there a typical day? Maybe you could explain a little bit for the viewers what it sort of looks like to be a CEO of a junior mining exploration company that's working in South America.
Sure. Well, I've been doing more and more podcasts lately. So that's certainly part of the job. There's a lot of travel involved, but a lot of it is just really getting out, communicating, telling the story, trying to participate in conferences and things as much as possible. But mostly ones where, are able to give a talk and get the message out there to more people. That's really, the job ultimately. And then I fortunately have an excellent team. Our VPX has been outstanding, keeping everything going smoothly on the ground. And then we're really building a, kind of a top-notch team on the technical and logistics side of things as well. So just overall managing that is a big part of it. And
how are you enjoying your work as CEO? Do you enjoy it more than the field work when you were doing more, operating as a geologist?
Well, I certainly did a lot more hiking around back with the geology side, but I do. I definitely enjoy it more. I like this level and getting to be able to put all the pieces together and think about everything more strategically and really look at building a company. I enjoy that quite a lot.
What catalysts do you have over the next 6 months? So sounds like you'll have some drilling. And how do you anticipate sort of putting those out? Are you putting them in batches, or are you putting them based upon certain target areas that you're drilling? What sort of other catalysts should shareholders and prospective shareholders be watching for?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, drilling, you're right. I mean, we're going to stick to kind of 2 to 3 week timeline overall as far as drill results go. That really jives with the production that we've been able to see out of the drill and the turnaround times of the lab. So that'll keep up. In terms of how we release things, it's sometimes a bit strategic, but anything material goes out as soon as we have it in. But we really try to put things together so that there's kind of a coherent story and message that comes through in the press releases as well. After that, we'll be in the near future here initiating metallurgical studies, both on the tailings front and on the what we're seeing at Froyo, various lithologies, etc., and some environmental baseline work, and just kind of moving that ball ahead as far as ultimately building towards a resource potentially in aiming for kind of mid 2015 or 2025, and then kind of going on from there.
Yeah, excellent. So, before you put out an MRE, make sure that you've drilled off and can make it sort of as big as an initial MRE can be, I would imagine. Um, it can be a bit of a double-edged sword coming out too quickly with those. There's sometimes a lot of pressure from investors, but you only have one chance to make a proper first impression. So, while you're obviously busy with the drill stick expanding, probably best to focus on that. Maybe some thoughts just on the mining and metals sort of environment. It's been a bit of a tough sector. I kind of see it as being, kind of there's sort of two crowds, the haves and then the have-nots. The haves, as I see it, would be ones that, have strategic investors and corporates as part of their cap table. And then the have-nots would be, kind of those that don't have corporates or strategic sort of deep-pocketed investors. Any sort of thoughts on that? Any thoughts on the commentary as somebody who's an ultimate insider, someone who's at the helm of one of these, and somebody who's done a bought deal with obviously a fairly conservative bank that's not usually reaching downstream like you indicated? Any thoughts on that sort of message?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it is definitely a period of haves and have-nots. In terms of founders, strategic investor wise, I mean, we had 1832 or dynamic funds came into things for 9.9% back last August, or the end of August there. And that was strategic involvement at that time. And they've been very supportive since then as well, and participating in the later rounds. After that, on the corporate strategic side, I mean, there's been quite a lot of interest, and as you can imagine, and we're kind of continuing on that road and seeing kind of what can come out of it. But there's definitely a dichotomy right now between the groups that are able to raise capital and the groups that are not. And people often they look at our chart and they think, well, it's easy, but I think the reality is that it is a tough market out there. And even now, if you look at some of the results we have, it takes a lot to move the needle these days. So,
Sure.
I do think, I mean, gold's stayed above 2,000 for quite a while here now. Volatility is still pretty high. And, I think it affects the junior space on the down a lot more than the up. And so, that's going to be a sticking point for a little while, but ultimately I think we're going to continue to swing positively.
Yeah, I would say probably tough with a high interest rate sort of environment, where some of the large cap, major U.S. sort of stocks, tech stocks have been performing almost like juniors the last while. Yeah. So probably takes a little bit of that away. But in terms of a comment you made about, I guess, corporates and majors, are you seeing them as being fairly aggressive in this sort of environment where there's not a lot of capital and maybe they can get better deals on things? Would you say that they're shopping and aggressively shopping or kicking tires at this point?
No, I'd say that they're starting to more aggressively shop. I mean, you look at the balance sheets of some of the majors and there's a lot of cash sitting there. And the market's been depressed in terms of the mining and metal space for a while. And so there's probably quite a lot of pretty spectacular assets out there that are certainly felt the pain. And represent some pretty incredible opportunities for those big balance sheets to acquire. So people are definitely looking more, as you can imagine.
Last question for you. Why should investors consider investing in Foundry Metals right now?
Yeah, right now, I mean, the big thing is that we're going to continue putting news out. So you get continual news flow. Drilling costs are very low. So we're very efficient in terms of use of capital. And overall, it's the scale of the property. I mean, that was what got us excited about it right from day one. 500,000 ounces of historic production, and that's with pretty low gold recoveries. Pointed to a 2.5 million ounce, of gold that have been moved just on the property at surface, and then some great historic drill hits, and now some fantastic hits from our own work. And it points to a big system, and we see opportunity, elsewhere on the property where. Overall, we've only explored only about a third of it's been explored really, and even that not in enough detail. So a lot of upside. Yeah, that's what we see.
Excellent. Well, hey, Colin, it's been nice to meet you and have you on. It's a story that we want to follow. Hopefully we can have you on in the next sort of quarter or 6 months if you got time, so we can get a bit of an update for the audience. But really appreciate your time, and it's nice to see that there's some bright spots sort of out there, and you guys have been very efficient with your capital and how you've been exploring. So wish you a good continued success on the drill stick, and having fun as sitting in the CEO seat. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks very much.